right, I'll make the motion to promote Treasurer Slavens to clerk for this meeting.
Support.
Motion made by trustee Snyderman, supported by trustee Ganguly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Treasurer Slavens, can you please take roll call?
Okay, good evening. Borninski,
Good evening.
Foster, is not here. Ganguly,
Good evening.
Graham Hudek,
Good evening.
Sechrist, not here. Slavens, good evening. And Snyderman.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Great, thank you. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I hear a motion to adopt the agenda with the addition of item G1, where we'll take a vote to consider request to increase the purchase order issued to Kodiak Emergency Vehicles?
Madam Supervisor, I motion that we adopt the agenda with the addition of G1.
Support.
Motion made by Treasurer Slavens, supported by trustee Borninski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, thank you. Motion passes. So what we're going to do is we'll start with item G1, which is to consider request to increase the purchase order issued to Kodiak Emergency Vehicles.
Madam Supervisor, I move to approve increasing purchase order number 1249-2021 issued to Kodiak Emergency Vehicles by $36,000, therefore declining the trade-in credit for 3 ambulances, including the original price quote.
Support.
Motion made by Treasurer Slavens, supported by trustee Snyderman. The fire department is requesting to increase the purchase order issued to Kodiak Emergency Vehicles for 3 ambulances by $36,000. The original purchase price included a trade-in credit of the same amount for 3 ambulances, which the department is now electing to keep for future sale. Director Stockline, do you want to add to that?
I'll just say that I guess I want more work. I don't know. So I think that when we originally set this up, $12,000 per vehicle was probably a reasonable price, and when I started thinking about it, I know that we can get more on the market for that. So even if we get $15,000 or $20,000 per vehicle, I feel like we can probably pull in another $20,000 to keep for ourselves rather than trading them in.
Thank you.
And I also spoke with Fleet, and they talked to the bidding company that we use right now, and they said they see $20,000 per vehicle as well, so.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Sounds good.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And now you're going to join the firemen who are buying toys for children at Myers. Yes. That's fun. How late is that going? How late does that go?
Until we get all the presents bought.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. Next item is a study session on ITI technology, and it's going to be led by our director, Victor Abegbu.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. If I may share my screen here. Yeah. Start from here. Okay. All right. Thank you again for having me here. I recognize that this is the first time I'm having a study session since I came to Canton Township, and so I want to do something a little bit different from other study sessions. I would like to use this opportunity to go through, from a holistic view, in terms of ITI operation so far since I got here. And subsequently after that, it is my intention to come before the board here with other subsequent, other ITI issues, so we can talk about them in details, all right? And please feel free to stop me and ask questions as I go forward. In 2021, the township did an assessment that covers everything in the township, including ITI operations. But I want to focus on those things that pertain to ITI operation. And as I'm going through this, please note that I came with me here. I have two colleagues of mine. One is not so fresh, but fresh in her position. She's the new ITI Applications Delivery Manager, Devon Landers. And of course, yours truly, Joe Kosinski is the ITI Manager. You know that face very well here. He's giving you the look now, but all right. And so, as I was saying earlier on, in 2021, the township did an organizational assessment, and that assessment had a few recommendations for the ITI department, one of which happened to be to create a separate ITI department that is overseen by ITI director. Secondly, to update and implement the township's ITI strategic plan. And thirdly, develop an ITI governance structure. And so I'm going to take it one by one based on that particular recommendation, and then we're going to see how that 2021 assessment also ties into 2016 strategic plan that was done earlier on. I might say that this assessment that was done organizational-wide was done by Red Felice, I believe, and the previous one was done for ITI department was done by Plant Moran. And so the very first thing that was recommended was to create an ITI department separate from the merger that he had at the time with finance department and overseen by ITI director. And of course, yours truly is here, started here since March 7th of 2022. And since that time, since 2022, once I got here, I've been able to do quite a few things. One of the key things that was very important to me was to do an assessment to figure out what it is that we have, do a SWOT analysis to see what's the state of the department. Also take a look at the document that was presented to me to see how that kind of pairs itself with reality. And so from March up until this time, we've been able to cover a lot of things. We've been able to talk to our stakeholders. We've been able to, interview them, figure out what are those things that they need, what's their want. How would they, how has things been, working really well, whether it's working well or not for each department. The next thing from that recommendation was to update and implement the township's ITI strategic plan. Now, please keep in mind that in 2016, the Plant Moran, which was the consultant, did a 5-year strategic plan with a few key objectives. One was the improvement of customer service, enhance operational efficiency, improve IT processes, enhance technology deployment and governance, implement best practices in IT project management, ideal staffing recommendations for IT department, hiring of ITI director to implement the plan life cycle, plan refresh, re-engage consultant, Plant Moran. Okay, and I'm going to talk in depth about some of these things. I recognize that time may not be on our side for me to start taking you in details into every single one of these, but I do believe that every member of the trustee here, you may still have a copy of that, the report that was produced by that assessment.
Not everybody was here at the time, so it'd be good if we could.
2016.
Yeah.
I think it was just me.
All right,
so.
we'll provide that.
Yeah. 16, you guys didn't come on till November, so, I don't know when it was, so it'd be
Okay.
good to refresh us by sending it out again.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Joe, do we have a Teams group for the trustees?
Oh, yeah, I guess.
We can drop that file into your Teams group or,
Do
Okay,
do we need to?
okay. Yeah, it's in the Teams group. Yeah.
Make sure the non-full-time electeds can get on Teams.
Can get on,
Yeah,
okay.
Well-
I mean,
I think we might want to just check on any Open Meetings Act issues with that.
oh, to distribute a document? Or?
No, but
Oh,
being in a Teams group.
Oh, yeah. Maybe via email might be best, yeah.
Okay, so we can
Yeah.
just pass it around through your email?
Yeah, we can't discuss.
You can't.
Yeah, so,
Okay,
Yeah, it's just.
all right,
makes sense.
all right. As they always say, all protocols observed, right? Okay. And so each item that you see here, whether it's the improvement of customer service, definitely has a merit for it to be there at the time. And so the question is, for instance, improvement of customer service, what made it to, show up in this list? Why was it in this list? Was it that we have, disgruntled customers, or was it that we're not, meeting the mark? But be it as it may, whatever it is, the goal is to improve from wherever we've been. And so it became one of the key things that the ITI department is really working hard to make sure that, we move that. And we're going to talk about that later on. Let me move to the next one. Okay. The other one is develop an IT governance structure. And to this regard, there were a few goals that were set. One is to establish a technology committee, which was already established and was, is up and running right now. Madam Supervisor chairs that with me as well. And also to establish an ITI steering committee. That committee is also up and running. The role of the ITI steering committee include things like how and why a particular solution/vendor was selected and what alternatives were considered, why the project is necessary, and the impact if the project is not pursued. Key objectives for the project and desired outcomes, benefits and potential risk associated with the project, evaluation of how similar projects have been implemented by other organizations and lessons learned, identification and implementation of process improvement for the business processes impacted by the project, total estimated project cost, including upfront costs, ongoing operation and maintenance costs, an estimated replacement cycle, estimated project timelines. Now, when you read through all these things, and sometimes it may not make all that sense to you, but here's the key thing with regards to establishing an ITI steering committee. As part of the exercise that we conducted as soon as I got here, it was easy for us to quickly discover that in the township here, we have just about 148 different applications and systems that are supported throughout. Amongst those were things that do similar things. So you have one department having one particular application that does similar thing from another department that has a different application that does the same thing. But because there wasn't any steering committee that, will allow you to look at these things and be able to say, okay, can you benefit from the one over here? Why don't we collaborate, make sure that things are working as it should? And so that's one of the main reasons why a steering committee is very, very crucial and very necessary. And again, I'm thankful that that steering committee was already established even before I got here. And we've continued to work with the steering committee. We meet like every 45 days. So in a year, we have quite a few meetings. I just talked about the total number of software and applications that we have in the township. And you can see a breakdown of that. And if you see yourself as, a high number here, don't beat yourself down so much. you know, you did it in good faith. Let's put it that way. You did it in good faith. You just want things to work. But now we're saying that while you want things to work, we want to make sense of things too. This is where we are coming in now. Providing the structure, providing the guidance, because truthfully, no organization of this size will want to find itself in this state. 148 is quite a bit. Actually, it's more than 148, I believe. It's 155.
Now, these are all different. These aren't common.
No.
Okay, they're all
Yeah.
different. All
Each and
different.
every one of them?
Yeah. It's not really, and I don't want to belabor everybody here by talking about the dangers of things like this, i.e. security, you know, when patches are necessary or when something happens, it's very difficult for you to trace it down, which one has what. And so the dangers of it are very high. So ITI embarked on an exercise to make sure that we understand these things. First and foremost, we talk to the stakeholders, every department, to figure out these particular softwares that you are using, what are you using it for? Why is it there? And in doing so, we were able to begin to immediately make sense out of what's going on and be able to, in places where we can, encourage collaboration, all right? Begin to sort of merge things, reduce that number. And we're going to talk about, you know, the broader effort that we have in reduction of this number.
So,
Yes.
so Victor, the support that IT would provide to all the different departments in the township, I mean, they would, all of those people would have to be trained on all of these different applications, right?
So now you're getting it. I'll talk about, you know, the staffing component. We have just a few handful of folks, right? There's no way we're going to make, you know, that number of handfuls of folks experts in 148 and be able to provide excellent service.
Yeah.
Ideally, we know exactly after we've done our SWOT analysis, we know what we do well. And we want to do those things that we do well, do it excellently in a way that we can be proud and happy of what we're doing. And the ones that we're not doing well, we say to ourselves, do we need it? You know, do we need this? Why do we have this?
In addition, we're spending vendor support
Exactly.
dollars, annual support fees for licenses, and well, there'll always be licenses, but yeah, I mean, you're paying your annual support fees for similar products, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
So, Victor, have you ventured into collaboration yet? Like, have you talked to departments where things can be done? Because
As part of the exercise, we basically told everybody that we're looking for opportunities to collaborate and, you know, basically reduce the number. And
you know, people get very territorial about their applications. Yeah.
you're speaking out of experience, right?
I used to, 10 years ago, I used to work in IT, and in the beginning I was in technical support, and it's not fun, like when people are very territorial about their stuff. And yeah, I understand that was the purpose of, you know, creating this
Yeah.
ITI department.
And when I start talking about the initiatives that we have, then you see our approach towards consolidation, because the whole effort is on consolidation. We consolidate where as much as we can, and then retire the ones that need to be retired because it's no longer necessary. You're right, people can be very territorial. And even on top of that, you know, we keep on getting more requests of new applications. But one thing that we're now doing is this. When you put that request in, we are going to do an analysis with you to figure out really what's your need. What is it that you need? One thing is to say, oh, I need this particular software. What does it do for you? Because when you tell us what it does for you, then we can say, oh, by the way, we have something over here that does the same thing. Why don't you use that? And it's also very important for us to keep in mind that things talk to each other. It's very important for us in IT to maintain the integrity of the overall system. If we are pushing out an update and another particular software requires a component that is not applicable or that is causing a problem, we don't want those type of scenarios. We want to make sure that things are streamlined. And so we explain all these things to everybody who puts in a new request. Give us some time to investigate that. But as you and I know, many times when those requests come in, they come in like, I need this yesterday. And we only have like 2 or 3 people to, deal with that. But we do our best. We do our best. Any questions or more on this? Okay. All right. So I think I'm moving real well today, so we should be able to get out on time. But I'm going to park here for a while because this is the meat and potato of everything. So ITI initiatives, right? So after looking at that 148 or 155, and we began to see how things work, in terms of structure or not. One of the key things that was presented to me before as soon as I got here was to make sure that we deploy the .gov, migration. And as part of that process, it also comes with Office 365 deployment. That puts us into the GCC tenant. That was done. As of today, we're still deploying Office products that come out of the Office 365 platform. But the .gov migration is done, and that one is completed. SharePoint transition for the source. If you in the township, you recognize that the source is our intranet. And so previously, the ITI department had worked very hard to create an intranet that is inside of 365 using SharePoint. But that particular project wasn't fully deployed, right? And so our goal, again, like I said, these are the initiatives. Our goal is to actually retire the source that we are currently using. Remember, the mindset is on consolidation. So if we successfully retire the source, that's -1. And we are putting what the source does inside of 365 platform by way of SharePoint. That's consolidation, all right? So again, remember, the key thing is consolidation. So we're working on this now, and thankfully, Devon here, who is skilled in SharePoint environment, that's one of the tasks that she's constantly working on now. We are not putting timeline at the moment for that because she's just new. I don't want to overwhelm her. The moment she started her job, there's a lot of stuff that came up to her plate. But again, stay tuned on that one. And this particular item, we will have a different study session, like I said, on each and every one of these at a later date.
So,
now, let's take some
Victor,
time. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I have a question about SharePoint.
Yes.
Or actually about the source. So as trustees, we have township computers, but we don't have access to the source. And so I'm wondering, and I think it's because we don't have offices here, we don't work in the building, we're using our computers at home. Is there any possibility of us being able to get onto the source?
Okay,
or
so
have that sometime?
Okay. Remember, the source is what we call intranet.
I
It's
know.
only available for internal consumption, right?
Right.
So you have to be.
But I don't even have it when I'm in the building.
You should have,
Well,
you
Are you
don't,
connected to internet?
okay. You don't have it, okay. All right, so,
No, and I was told when I got trained on my computer that at some point they thought they were going to give trustees access to it.
to the
but-
source,
Yeah.
okay. Let me
And
ask,
I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but.
all right. So now the new protocol is about to kick in for me, right? Once this is a request, the new protocol is about to kick in for me without me getting the form before you to ask you. So why do you need the source?
Because sometimes we'll get emails and it'll say, oh, the info's on the source.
Okay,
And I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have the info.
So,
Will the
Okay.
SharePoint solution be cloud-based, or is it also intranet?
SharePoint is cloud-based, but also is internal.
You have to come
Yeah.
through,
However, some elements of it, you can make it externally accessible,
okay.
depending on what element of it. Yes,
so
Joe.
what happens when full-time employees work from home? Do they have access to the?
Yes, you can. When full-time employees work from home, and Joe, you can speak on this, they have VPN access to the network.
So why can't we get the VPN access?
A lot of it's employee information, so I don't know, Joe, what the history was, why it was always.
Good evening, everyone. The trustees' laptops are not domain-joined computers.
Okay.
They're so infrequently that we've tried it in the past with previous board members, and it put such a burden on you to get your computers to us almost weekly. It wasn't realistic.
Okay.
So a couple of boards ago, we decided, trustees, you get a computer that is not not joined to our internal network. Yes, you can be provided via VPN access to our internal network from the computers as they're configured currently. We would just need access to your computer. I'm taking Steve's this evening. He needs some work performed, and we need to perform some updates. But at some point, you would need to come in and work with either Rosanna or Bobbin, and we could train you with how to use the VPN. And certainly at that point, you would have access to the source and any of the other internal applications that I might be requested to provide access for you to. To Steve's question, the source, as we're doing it on SharePoint, is 100% cloud-based. You have to log in to be able to access it, though. You all, because of the fact that you have every board member, whether they're elected or you're all elected, I'm sorry, the trustees and the full-time electeds, you all have the highest license version of Office that is available to us. So just by virtue, when we do go to release the source in SharePoint, you'll just go to portal.microsoft.com, kind of like you do, only instead of clicking on the Office button on the left, you'll click on SharePoint. And it will take you to the source at that point when we are at the stage where we can release that.
Will VPNs allow you to push updates to our
No.
machines more? No.
No, now the VPN is just you should be getting updates regularly every patch Tuesday that Microsoft pushes updates out. It looks like your computer may have updated to Windows 11, Steve, if I recognize the.
Yeah.
So if that were a domain computer, it would have been prevented from doing that. Because we're not ready as an organization to adopt Windows 11. The police department can't at this point, so.
Gotcha.
There were more benefits, it was this more of a way to provide you folks ease of use and not having to ask you, hey, it's 2 weeks, can you come in so we can do this or that to your computer? So
Understandable.
someday when Microsoft makes all the on-premise stuff go away and we're all 100% in the cloud, even for this, that won't be an issue, but that's probably still 5-7 years down the road, so.
All right.
Did I answer everyone's
So we can VPN to the
Yes.
internet? Okay.
And Tanya, if I hear you saying that you'd like to volunteer to be my first guinea pig, we can make that happen for you.
Well, I'm gone for a month.
Yeah,
You could
Well,
do
I
it on
can-
mine. when-
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we
When
can
you
do
take
that.
it.
I can come at any time.
Okay.
Let me know.
Okay. No, we certainly can. We can set up a shortcut.
But I'll definitely come in January and
Okay.
want to get that
No,
VPN. because
I will,
I
when I'm
was-
finished,
Yeah, I was here for a meeting and I couldn't get, like, they were talking about certain documents that I didn't
Yeah.
have access to. And
now let me think about this out loud for a second, if I may. When you're in the township, and right now, the 4 trustees are on the guest network, because
Right.
you're not a domain computer, you can't join mobile. I can't allow, there's no way for you, for your computer as a non-domain computer to access mobile, because the certificates that are exchanged back and forth are not on your computer and cannot be placed on your computer without you joining the domain.
But we
I'm
could
not-
VPN from here
No.
if we had, no.
Because you're still inside the network,
Oh.
and the network, the firewall sees it as a hairpin turn, and that is one of the very fundamental
but I can
firewall.
VPN from home, right?
Yes, you can VPN from home. You could, if you happen to be here and you really needed to VPN during a meeting, you could connect, well, it's poor signal in here, but you could connect to a hotspot
Yeah.
and VPN in, because
Yeah.
you would be external.
That's
so-
what I do on my work. That's
Yeah.
what we do on my other work computer. Yeah.
Or if you're up to probably at least monthly, making sure that IT gets a few minutes of hands on your computer, we can make your computer a domain computer.
Let's start with VPN.
Okay.
I think.
All right. I
I
would
think-
recommend that because,
I seem to be not on the guest network. It says Canton Board Connected.
I'm sorry?
The network that I'm on I can see the guest network, but I'm not connected to that. I'm connected
Oh,
to Canton
that's right,
Board.
because yes, right, I forgot. We have a wireless network
Okay.
specifically for your 4 computers.
Okay.
But
Just checking.
it's a different name, same services behind the scenes that provides Canton Guest is providing Township Board, so.
All right. Sorry to derail.
Oh, no,
But all right,
that's okay.
Conversation.
Remember when I got to this slide, I said, this is where we're going to park. This is where most of the conversation will
Yeah,
happen.
this is customer service. right?
Yeah.
Doing customer service.
So please note that there are efforts to transition the source to SharePoint. And once that is done, once you log in, you should be able to still get the source, all right? Or whatever name we call it. It may not necessarily be the source anymore, but yeah. Any more question on that one? All right, so let's spend some time again talking about the ERP system, government management software suite, software as a service solution. So when we did the analysis and we got that 148, we were able to begin to see those things that are common, and we were able to begin to see what are those most important ones for the township to be able to continue its business. And so we instantly started asking the question, okay, what are the core tools that this township uses for its business? The ERP solution, or what we consider to be our current ERP solution today, is the Tyler. And that particular application or that particular solution is all what we call end of life, right? We have been notified that they will no longer be actively developing that product. So it's very important that the township does something to, one, move away from it, or find a way to, for the meantime, operate with it until we get somewhere, until we get to something else. And so we also reviewed again other products that are other solutions that are being used in the township, the solutions that are used in departments like MSD and Public Works, right? Tyler, while Tyler handles majority of our ERP needs, right? i.e. Billing and financial things, it still doesn't cover everything that the township does. So the question is, do we look for something that will provide broad coverage for everything that the township does, or do we find a happy medium somewhere that will be a collection of softwares that will allow us to function? And to that regard, we started some work on that. We pushed out what we call needs document to every department to sort of help document what are those core components of what they do, what they should let us know, what are those features that they cannot live without. And after the documentation of that, we were able to begin to sort of put together an initial RFP document for this ERP. But it wasn't too long in that process that we realized that, look, this is township-wide, and we probably will need additional help to that regard. And so we started the conversation about engaging a consultant to be able to do this, because before I got here, and also as part of that previous analysis that was done and the strategic plan that was done by Plant Moran, the consultant company. Before I got here, there was an understanding, if I may call it that way, that at some point we may have to move or transition to a new ERP system. And hence, a particular amount of money was earmarked by the trustees. I think it was about $1 million to be able to do so when we get there. I will sort of hint that while we are glad that there was an earmark of $1 million, but in today's market and in today's industry, $1 million is far short from what should be, what it should be. And again, we don't know the actual numbers, but the initial assessment that we've done, given the market trends, points to the fact that $1 million may not necessarily be enough for that. And so it's something for us to think about. However, for today, it's crucial that we understand the asking of the ITI department as it relates to the ERP consideration. One, we are asking basically to be authorized to engage a consultant that will help us, because again, remember, this is township-wide. It's very broad, it's very huge in terms of the asking and the tasks that are involved. The other thing to keep in mind is that we have, again, I'll keep on pointing to it from time to time in our conversation tonight, we have just a handful of folks in the ITI department. There is a real clear and present danger of overtasking and overworking the individuals. They've really been excellent over the years because we continue to ask them to do, and they do without asking questions. But there comes a time when, how you stretch and stretch and stretch. We don't want it to break, by no means. And so my first asking tonight is to be authorized to really engage the consultant, Plant Moran, to this regard. And as I mentioned Plant Moran, I'm also mindful of the fact that there was an initial attempt to re-engage Plant Moran for an update on the 2016 strategic plan of the ITI department. Because you see, that strategic plan, majority of what was called out in that strategic plan still remains valid, but not necessarily exact, because in IT, things are very dynamic. So there's a need for us to sort of do an update, if I may call it that way. When we talked to Plant Moran, had a meeting with them just to gauge the extent of what we are asking them to do. They return back to us, okay, yes, on the issue of ERP, there are so many things that you haven't considered. There are so many things that are involved that because this is really what they do. And it was important for us to also note at the time when we met with them that they are currently going through the same thing right now with Battle Creek, right? Battle Creek, going through the same thing with Battle Creek. And so we're not alone in that arena. Going through the same thing with Battle Creek, almost similar kind of thing, the same kind of ERP solution. I think they're also using Tyler, right? So there are a lot of things to be benefited from that particular kind of thing if we choose to engage them. I did ask them to give me an idea what that cost may be. For the ERP solution, you're looking at their consultant fee will be somewhere around between, I can't see my notes here.
For the ERP, Plant Moran was projecting a $60,000 to $95,000 engagement fee. And then for an IT assessment follow-up, they were estimating a range of $55,000 to $70,000. In 2016, we paid $49,200, so that's not too far off. And if Victor, if I may, just speak for a moment about the ERP. I consider the staff that work in IT to be excellent. However, we can't be experts in everything. And as we have one staff who has taken on the role of trying to write the RFP, and she's done outstanding work in creating a basis of an RFP, collecting information from departments, of orchestrating and organizing departments, asking the questions, getting information so that we could make a viable RFP. However, a couple of weeks ago, we had some internal discussions, and it was just proposed that, we're not experts in replacing an ERP. There are probably and certainly things we can't think of. We don't do this every day. So that's when we asked Plant Moran to come out, and we met with them last Thursday or Friday, I believe. And there were several points that they brought up that we had never thought about, that they said, it really needs to be asked of these. And I'm sure there are 5 times many more points to be brought up. And the other thing that I would like to say, we have precedents for the IT department using a consultant company. Steve, I believe you were on in 2018. The board approved us to use Plant Moran to help us run our phone replacement RFP. They did an outstanding job in helping us craft the RFP, publish it, go through the responses, and select a vendor. And then they were here the evening that we presented to the board, and the board approved at that time CDW to take, to provide us a new phone system. So, while that may seem like a large range in comparison to the figure that Victor indicated earlier, potentially $1 million, that's really a small amount, I think, and we would get very many miles and traction out of, I think, partnering with Plant Moran to be able to aid the township, actually, not just IT, but aid the township in helping us navigate how to get where we want to be.
Were you here, Joe, when we implemented the current system, ERP system?
Tyler?
I would not call it an ERP, but yes.
It's not. It's not officially one. It's just
Yeah,
used as
so when I came, we were doing homegrown Fox Pro applications. And then who was before Tyler? New World. we left Tyler for New World. We went through that RFP process. And we selected New World, and somewhere in the last 5 or 6 years, I believe, Tyler came along and bought New World Technologies. BSNA, I was here when we were on the homegrown applications, when Treasurer Kiercutter was here, and at some point, the decision was made to leave the homegrown applications, and she got on to BSNA. So you've been on BSNA for a very long time, 16, 17 or longer years. So, and we really don't have any preconceived ideas as who's going to win this. There are so many ways that this could go. But Plant Moran was very honest. If you want a company that could do all of it, is gonna have higher costs than if you select 2 or 3 companies to do the majority. So I think their experience and their insight would be extremely beneficial to this overall effort.
Okay, thanks.
I was going to say, this is going to be a heavy, heavy lift, so I understand the ask of, getting Plant Moran to assist, because this is huge in a township this large,
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the township is not an IT company. You are here to support us, not to, these type of solutions have to come from consultants, and I think it's justified.
Okay. Thank you.
And also keep in mind as well that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that we build that synergy in-house. To that regard, we've been able to constitute a committee a committee that we call the subject matter experts, right? And the goal is to use those subject matter experts, in this process, because you need champions, particularly for this type of thing that is very sensitive and very important to the township. You need champions that will make sure that this is delivered in the right way. I must also say this to everybody here, that the township here has a good amount of mature workforce, meaning that the mature workforce are vested in whatever solution or application that they are in. And so if we do this rightly, people will not be so scared of change, because you always run into the challenge when you're dealing with mature workforce. So it's very important that you go through it from the angle of a neutral kind of person, as opposed to when a mature workforce views it as if you have a skin in the game, so to say. All right, so it's very crucial that we keep that in mind. The committee met, and everybody was, I would like to say, very enthusiastic about what is to come, and that sort of tells about this whole process. We have one department that basically said to us, we can't wait for this to be done, right?
Was that the ITI department?
You'll be surprised, no.
No.
I don't know if I want to call them to the carpet,
I'll say it. It was the building department.
Yeah.
Our current solution is long in the tooth, and it doesn't offer our residents very much flexibility, and certainly Devin could speak more, because she's been in the trenches with them for the last 2.5 years, feeling their pain. And she's done wonderful work in trying to help them address that pain. But it's time. There's an application that I believe we're going on year 14, Devin?
Yes,
Yeah.
year 14. It's a very old system. It's aged, and they also have a cloud-based version now, but the system is highly customized, and that's the problem. When you update customizations break, and processes are geared towards a system that is not used in its intents and purposes. So they've customized their own processes to kind of fit the system. So it's a very old system.
So, yeah, so Devin, she comes from MSD. She's new to the department here, so congratulations on your
Thank you.
promotion.
Thank you.
But she was, like she said, she basically rubber banded the building department inspection calendar
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Over and
Yes.
above. So when she went on maternity leave, we had a hard time this summer.
Yes, they-
Yeah. So what was happening, it was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was scheduling people out like 3 weeks ahead of time because it just wasn't working, because she wasn't there to, manually
Yeah.
move things.
Usually I move things around and I check it every day, and yeah, so those are the sort of Band-Aids, and they don't have fixes for that. You have to go into development, it's a change request for them because they have to get their developers to redevelop their code and their system. So it's time for us to, and that's the pains of the building department.
We have a lot of programs like that, I think.
Yeah.
It's very important for us to keep in mind what Devon just said, heavily customized. That's not really the place where we want to be with any system that is heavily customized. That's really not the place where we want to be. And so it makes it very important that we go through this process with competent and reputable hands that will help us navigate, the road ahead. And so, like I said earlier on in my at the beginning, each of these items here in the initiatives will more or less be their own study session alone, because as you can tell, we can go on and on the ERP solution. So I will gladly move on to that, but I'll say to everybody, please stay tuned. ITI will schedule study session on each individual initiative here, so we can do justice to the whole thing. However, like I said earlier on today, we will be requesting authorization to engage with a consultant on this issue. So I move on to the consideration of cybersecurity. While we haven't done an official cybersecurity analysis, we've been able to look at the township posture in terms of cybersecurity to see where we are and what can we do. Yes, again, we will be conducting cybersecurity analysis at a later date. Why is it that we're pushing it backwards? But because we definitely know that there are a few other things that are also top on our list. And so, however, the initial assessment that we've done on cybersecurity posture identified a few things, i.e., the age or the life cycle of equipments that we have, network equipments now, and also the personnel behaviors, and I'm really not looking at Steve while I'm talking about this particular one, but all those tie into the conversation of cybersecurity. We often hear about townships, municipalities, counties that got hijacked in terms of their operation because somebody made a simple mistake or a careless mistake. So we're saying that here in Canton Township, while majority of folks are, are well aware of, the dangers that are out there, every now and then we'll still see things that are far left, every once in a while, might still see somebody who writes their password underneath their keyboard, those kind of stuff, and IT kind of, I'm sorry, I didn't call out anybody.
You can't see my keyboard. Must be Anne-Marie's.
So every now and then we see these little things, and we, try to address them through the know before training, and we continue to encourage folks to, do their best practice and be aware of what's going on today. Behind the scene, we are doing everything that we can, given the resources that we have to keep the township operations safe. However, everything links together, all right? What Devon talked about a highly customized solution that is being used by MSD is also a vulnerability source. When you have an old system that is heavily customized, all right, that's also one area that is a loophole, and our goal is to make sure we plug all the holes. We talk about also things that in types of cybersecurity, all the nodes that are on the network. We talk about things like, the cameras that are on the network. There's this particular conversation going on. You may have heard about it, about Hikvision cameras that the federal government banned. We've talked about that and possibility of finding ways to make sure that we reduce or eliminate, rather, every single one of them. And so when you do a cybersecurity analysis as we know it today, it's going to flag a whole bunch of stuff. The question is, we know some of those, and we try our best to mitigate the challenges posed by those ones, but we cannot continue to live on status quo for a long time. So again, cybersecurity will be its own study session where everything will be looked at critically. Our network infrastructure, we are also looking at that. Is another consideration. As I talked about earlier on, as it relates to cybersecurity, the age of our network equipments are pretty old. And we've started doing some work in terms of changing the ones that are dying, and also planning for the future on how to retire those assets that they've done their time, all right? And again, like I said, its own study session, or maybe we can combine a couple. System and application infrastructure. This part is another one, and each one here requires its own consideration because it's not a chicken change to be able to, do these things. It's quite some amount of money. Some of them we do have in the budget. Some of them will require additional allowance in the budget to be able to execute some of these. But when we dive into it in their own study session, we will be able to call out what we anticipate that it will cost. But there's some huge costs that will be considered. I want to talk a little bit about the website content management system because I know that this touches quite a lot of stuff. It borders on customer relationship that we have here. It borders on how we deliver some services. It borders on our experience, the type of experience that we provide to the township. And so this can also and will also be its own study session. However, today, we've been able to, as part of that initial analysis that we did, an assessment of the systems that we have, we've been able to identify a few things that will sort of help the experience, all right? Currently, we are on the platform of Civic Plus. And under Civic Plus, that's the one that manages our website and also manages the operation of Civic Rec, right? And also does the engagement on the website with the chat and the ADA, right?
Yes, the chat bot, which was implemented approximately a year ago, and the ADA compliance, which we adopted, I want to say about 3 years ago. So, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. And so when we look at everything there, we've definitely had from different constituencies, right? We've had from different stakeholders. We've had from the technology committee about, how the current website may or may not necessarily be meeting the needs of the residents. And we've had from the residents directly on, the shortfall of the website. And so there's an ongoing effort to really revamp the website to an extent that it will continue to engage our citizens, right? But that effort was sort of stunted because at a point, the calculation was that when we get the new logo, it would drive the new design. And so we stalled over a long period of time because we didn't get the logo that would drive the design of the new website. So it appeared at a point that nothing was happening. But I do believe today that there's an okay, or there's an agreement on the logo. So the communications group, they're working on that to make sure they present a befitting design that will take to the website, take to the web company to be able to render something that will help enhance the website. Now, that is given within the parameters of the existing agreement with the CMS provider, the content management provider. Should that not meet the target, then we will continue to explore options. There are certainly proposals that we have within the portfolio of Civic Plus, and that will allow us to expand what we have today under Civic Plus. That will include things like Civic Clerk. Now, let me talk a little bit about Civic Clerk, because Civic Clerk is something that will allow, the function of trustees, the function of board meetings. It will no longer, if we deploy that, it will no longer be a scenario where approvals are done or voting are done by yea or nay, but we'll be able to capture that electronically through the platform of Civic Clerk that is part of Civic Plus offering, right? Moving of board actions and stuff, everything will move seamlessly under Civic Clerk. And so, again, this is a proposal that we have received. We received it from Civic Plus. As part of that proposal also comes in, I believe, See-Click Fix. If you remember, we talked about See-Click Fix, deploying it in the township. That's the one that if somebody's walking down the road and there's a pothole, they can just take a picture of it and just report it, right? This is also part of the portfolio of Civic Plus. I think I'm missing one, Civic Optimize, that will allow us to basically revamp the way forms are deployed in the website. So there are a few things that had been identified in the website, and Civic Plus has some solutions to those. Are they holistic? The jury is out, but again, it's something that the web committee is looking at. We do have this proposal, and if it is the pleasure of the board to say, okay, engage on to this regard, and we'll find the money, we certainly will move that to that direction. However, I would like to say that the current allowance that we have for Civic Plus allows us to do a refresh. And that refresh does have some limitations because it's not a total revamp, but we'd like to explore that refresh, see where it leads us, see if we're happy with that before we can continue to push the envelope on that. And any questions so far on that? Okay. Let me see, how am I doing on time? I think I'm okay. Let me talk a little bit about broadband capacity, both for the township and the township in general. Also, as part of the initiative coming out from the technology committee, we have been looking at ways of making the broadband experience throughout the entire township something that is truly a reflection of 21st century. today, if you are at home and you do your speed test, particularly when everybody is at home, you're not going to get what was sold to you, what the ISP is sold to you, and that's really crucial. And so we know that the ISPs are advertising based on the census data and also based on the data that was supplied to FCC, that Canton in particular is one of those areas where they have like 96 or 97% broadband adoption. And we are saying to everybody who, helped put that up to FCC, that is not true. This is very crucial because when you represent Canton that way, you know that we are going to definitely miss out on the money that is coming from IIJ funding, because the funding is basically earmarked for communities that do not have, anything. But you and I know that the experience tell a different story. And so to that regard, FCC now realized that they need a different map to get the true picture of broadband in different communities. So they started this program. I think they published it was it 2 weeks ago, where we're now asking residents to, go in. I can forward that link to everybody.
Yeah, we should put that on the website.
Okay.
Yeah, I just saw an article about that today on one of the local news, or actually I think it was the news from Lansing or Grand Rapids, but I think I might have shared it. We'll see.
Yeah.
Is
We
this-
did share it with the technology committee, so maybe that's where you saw the link.
Is
No,
there,
this was
Sorry.
just me browsing the web, and
Okay.
I happened on this story, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. The FCC wants us to
Yes.
report to them what.
is it just
access we have.
subjective, like I'm just saying what I'm experiencing, or is there some technology behind?
So
They're
it will
reporting.
require you to run some speed tests.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but manually, or do you just download software and it just?
Manually,
Oh.
we expect you to tell the truth and nothing but
Yeah.
the truth.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
They could probably capture more accurately if they just, people voluntarily can download a speed test that just reports automatically.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or do it the right way, or, human error and such.
Right now, they're basically utilizing information that they're getting from AT&T and Comcast and
Yes.
things like that, whereas we know it's not quite, as good as they're saying.
Yeah, and it depends where you are on the fiber line and how, or the
How far
copper, some is
Copper.
still copper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
how far you are from a node.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
And certainly for us here in Canton, we haven't, I do believe the likes of AT&T promotes that they have fiber to the homes, right? But yes, they have fiber to the homes, but that only ends at Cherry Hill Village.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, if they say they have broadband, you know what you have? You have DSL.
yeah,
And with DSL, you cannot get more than 24 meg.
yeah.
Under today's operation requirement, 24 meg is nothing. And even on that 24 meg, at some time of the day, if you get 2 or 3 meg, you're lucky.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we tell the true story of the experience of residents as opposed to what ISPs are reporting, because the ISPs will report that they're supplying Canton, higher bandwidth. It's also important to note on that conversation that at a point we wanted to, and it's still certainly on the table, but to do the same thing, do our own data collection to be able to counter what what was already reported to FCC. Now, for the township, we've made some progress for the township. We've been able to provide a secondary bandwidth option for the township that is higher than what our primary is. We partnered with Crown Castle to provide at least a gig of service to the township, as opposed to the 500 meg that is currently being provided by Comcast. And the goal is to actually swap that, make that gig service our primary, and then move the Comcast to secondary. So we stay tuned on that, on the broadband initiative. There's quite a lot of moving parts to that. There's a lot of money involved, and there's still not too much of clarity in terms of the funding that is supposed to come to townships as it relates to broadband. But we stay too close to that to monitor that. Question on the broadband thing?
Well, Stephen had a good point. I mean, could we suggest to the FCC that they put something on that could basically measure the customers at their nose versus them trying to figure out what their speed is? Maybe we could see if they could add that on or something. 'Cause it's hard.
Or just a little voice.
Yeah, that's
But-
true.
But they listen though, sometimes, but again, you have to also remember when you ask them to put something like that, many people might be suspicious of
Yeah.
that.
But if you get,
Yeah.
a small percentage around the community. Will anything with the Ford Road redo enhance broadband in the community with the ability to put fiber along Ford Road when,
With the reconstruction?
with the reconstruction? Yeah.
Certainly. So we've engaged MDOT as part of the conversation to make sure that at the very least, that we provide conduits that the ISPs can ride on, right, and make it easy to pull their fiber all along areas where they may not necessarily have thought of.
Yeah.
And that same mindset, we are beginning the conversation to carry that same mindset along, every other area that we may have an opportunity for reconstruction, so that it's easier for ISPs to know that when you have a conduit, all they have to do is just run their fiber. The construction is already done, so it's easier for them to move their facility through that.
Related to that, Victor, I know it's not your department's responsibility, but in conjunction with this, cell coverage in our community is pretty lacking, I think. So I'm on AT&T, and I get terrible signals on Ford Road, when we're there. And I don't know what it's like for Verizon and
Verizon's
mobile,
better.
T-Mobile and stuff, but, are there any discussions in this area to enhance cell coverage?
Certainly, I've been monitoring a few conversations going on with other communities, and it's been a sort of, a mixture of results, right? So you have on one hand some communities that, build the infrastructure and then told the ISPs, look, we're building this tower, we need you to come and put your, equipment on the tower so that the cellular service can be boosted. But when you go to the providers and say to them, come build the tower, they'll say, no, we'll pass. So again, in any opportunity that we have, maybe we might, adopt that strategy.
We did meet with MDOT, and they pulled in the ISPs, AT&T, Comcast, WOW, but they had them all at a meeting with us, and Victor did talk about
Ford Road?
Ford Road, also, they all have their own conduits, so we should start piggybacking off of each other. Oh,
Yeah.
So we did push that. Well, we have to keep pushing that, though.
Definitely, we continue to push them and make it make business sense for them. But what we do not want is for them to feel that what they're giving us is enough. What they're giving us, I mean, where I live, I used to be AT&T DSL customer. And, when my kids are all at home trying to do some homework,
Oh, yeah.
you just can't do anything.
And, remote learning and
Yeah.
more people are working at home out of the pandemic
Yeah,
than 4 years ago, so.
Some parents are going back to work so that, their children can use, that was happening when children were doing
The
remote
internet,
learning.
yeah.
And so the strategy for us here in the township is to build coalition where we can, and with every opportunity that we have, provide infrastructure that will sort of maybe be an incentive for the ISPs. It's crucial to note that we're not at a place where the township will be its own ISP. And this is the case that I've been making to the ISPs. So, because you have to be careful with these ISPs. When they see you as a threat, it's not fun. Not fun. And so you have to build a coalition with them, make them feel that they're partner into it. But bottom line is, we want the best service for our residents. That's just the bottom line. And certainly, when there's money attributed to it, we want to get our own portion of it too. That's all. The next thing I want to talk about is the GIS roadmap and the adoption of GIS and / integration of it. GIS is a tool that the township is using in a decent amount, right? But there seems to be a lack of cohesion in terms of how the township uses GIS at the moment. And so this is one of the consideration that we will be bringing back in as its own study session, because ideally we would like to know what's the vision of the township as it relates to GIS, because GIS enhances a lot of things, but we have to have the willingness to make that work. All right. So, is it part of our strategy? Again, IT will work diligently to make sure that these solutions, are effective, but it has to be utilized. All right. The way we have it set up today is a little bit awkward, if I may say so, because it's kind of loosely affiliated to ITI, but at the same time, system-wise is tied to ITI. Again, we will look in depth at these things and be able to figure out how do we want to structure it. ITI do have its own recommendations, but again, remember, ITI is not here to dictate the way things should run. If the township decides to say, oh, we are going to use GIS, then ITI will make sure that the township uses GIS in the best way possible. But, it has to be like, I feel like, that PBB thing, do we have a mandate or not, right? If there is, that will to say GIS is something that the township should use to enhance its services, then we will definitely make sure that that happens. Second to the last initiative I have here is the consideration of business continuity. In representing business continuity here, I want to strictly talk about, staffing for ITI, right? Staffing for ITI and how it affects the solutions that we're prescribing, the applications that we're supporting. Again, if you listen to what I said earlier on, right here in the township, you have quite a a majority of mature workforce. In the ITI department, you have an average, a length of time of service, probably at least about 20 years or more, all right? And that comes also with specific expertise that you cannot just walk down the street and go grab, right? So we have to be intentional about these things. What sort of plans are we providing for business continuity as it relates to staffing for ITI department? And again, majority of these things that we're talking about today, they are all elements of that 2016 strategic plan. The last thing I want to talk about today is disaster recovery.
I have a question.
Yes.
How many employees do we have in the ITI department? Or do we also have employees integrated in other departments that work on IT?
Let me, okay, my next slide, right here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
I jumped it. So, yeah,
Okay.
go back.
I'll go back to the other slide, but
Yeah.
let me, now that you asked, let's, deal with that. So what you see here is what you get, but I want to draw your attention to a few things, right? So you have Joe here, who is the ITI manager, Devon Landers, who is the ITI applications delivery manager. We have one, Eric McDaniel, who's the web administrator, Jessica Pietka, data administrator, Rosanna Cerroti, help desk/trainer. Now, Nicole Bosch and Dave Morris, they have sort of this kind of lose-lose relationship with ITI because they are actually posted into other departments, all right? The same way Devon was posted into MSD for a while until she became the manager and we pulled her. But, that old position is going to be filled and ideally is going to be filled and full-time inside of ITI. So this is what you see here on this list is what you get. And this is what you have supporting 155 applications. This is what you have supporting, like about 66 data switches throughout the entire township. This is what you have supporting the VMware infrastructure. This is what you have supporting the ERP system that we have here. This is what you have supporting the telephone system that we have here, because again, the telephone system is hosted in-house. You're not looking at any other thing. It can be overwhelming. And so from the perspective of the 2016 strategic plan, there were some recommendations. Certainly, myself, your humble self, was part of that recommendation to hire one, but I've often wondered why it stopped at me, right? What about the rest, right, that was part of the recommendation? So those other recommendations are there. But also keep in mind that the structure is changing. If we successfully move to the new ERP system and whichever format that comes in, chances are also there will be additional requirement, particularly for a new thing in the township. So I'm pleading, right, that yes, we need additional help, and we need it like yesterday. I don't want the guys or the gals, right, to get bogged down. Then the other conversation to have is whether we want to maintain the lose-lose relationship that we have between the GIS mapping specialist and the asset management supervisor, which is posted to DPW. I know that's more than you asked me in terms of staffing, but does
No,
that?
I understand what.
Okay. Again,
Thank you.
you're welcome. We'll dive into it more when we get to the special session for that one. Last on the list here is disaster recovery. And again, disaster recovery, I put it down here as an ITI initiative. But I would like to say, just like every other thing, that we will dive more into it. We do have a way to recover, but not necessarily ideal, all right? So, not necessarily ideal. So, again, in any of these initiatives, remember, it will take some work, it will take some funding for us to get to the ideal place where we want to get to. Please look forward to the sessions that will be forthcoming where we can dive more into all these. And I think I've consumed enough of your time for tonight. If you have additional questions for me and Devon and Joe, please let me know.
I think I shared with all of you about what happened, what they talked about at the MML conference, when a community, a smaller community in Michigan, basically was ransomwared. And I mean, they didn't have, I mean, we back up daily. I mean, that's our backup. This community had not backed up in 3 months. And they had, it was in Oakland County, and they brought in the FBI, they brought in the Oakland County Task Force team for IT, and it, you know, they ended up negotiating with the ransomware people. But the big thing we've gone to, and I think I even forwarded you the letter we had written to Garland Gilchrist, asking him, you know, we need like a GSA schedule to really beef up our firewalls and, you know, our software to make sure that we are not infiltrated. However, just because we're large, a small community needs the exact same thing, because they can shoot things into us also. It's like a Trojan horse into us. So we met with MTA, the head of MTA last week, and he's very interested in helping with that and asking Victor some more questions to provide. But, you know, we really need a GSA schedule, because as you're going to see, the cost that, you know, we're going to be asking for is, you know, it's $300,000 to get this firewall, but $100,000 every year afterwards. You know, so it's not a cheap endeavor at all with what we need to do to protect ourselves.
You know, security and IT operation is not cheap. Let me put it that way. Security is not cheap. You have organizations that spend, you know, millions of dollars on security. And it's one of those things that you look at it and you say, okay, many times in our meeting we say, what's going on? Well, and I say, thank God we haven't been, you know, breached, at least not that I know of, but that's not enough. You know, that's really not enough. That, you know, knock on wood will be, you know, and I'm not saying that that's all that we do, you know, but there's a whole lot more that we can do. And certainly one of those things, as, you know, Madam Supervisor mentioned, is, you know, our next asking we have an RBA coming up to deploy a next generation firewall that will allow us to help us stay ahead of the game. What we have today is working, but we are seeing traces where, you know, it may not be up to speed. And Joe, you want to speak a little bit more on that?
I would love to. So you'll receive a board item next week. The cost of the firewalls and the services is $301,000. If you break down, which will be part of the board packet, the ongoing support and maintenance, and then the subscriptions for the protections that we're asking for. We're buying the maintenance and the support and the subscriptions for 3 years because we got a better price. So the hardware is a one-time cost of roughly, let me say roughly, $51,000. There are some implementation services that we're purchasing from the selling vendor, $22,000. So the remaining expense, the 172 plus the 55, those cover 3 years. So if you take those two, add them, divide by 3, we're spending approximately $70,000 a year on this solution. So I can tell you, our current firewall is manual. We have a service that Municipal Services offers builders and residents to be able to drop off electronic copies of building plans. It's a honeypot. The last 6 weeks, there's not been a week gone by where we've been under a million individual attacks against the organization and primarily that particular service. Russia, in the last 3 days, has gone through the roof. I cleared the counter this morning. We're already at 300,000. I protect that. I get an email every time this honeypot, this service is, somebody fails to log in. I look up the IP address. 99% of the time, it's out of the country. It's this week, Russia. A lot of the times, China, Iran. I'm sorry, Victor, Jamaica. European countries, Belgium, France, everywhere. And I think they're starting to catch on to me because recently they've started going into US-based Google Cloud services or another cloud provider called DigitalOcean. And they're knocking on the door. And I'll go in and I'll find the address, go into the firewall, make a decision on how much of that I want to block. And Thanksgiving, Friday, when we were off, I got an email notice from Microsoft that they were going to temporarily suspend the ability for me to get emails. Yet 7,700 emails from somebody failing to log in. It was somebody in Russia. 7,700 times in 2 hours attempted to log into that file portal. So I don't want to sound like Chicken Little. It's potentially, there's big risk with where we currently sit. With Victor's help, hopefully you'll see the way through to approve this next week. Right now, we're driving a Chevy. We're asking for an Escalade. So I think they had too many communities surrounding us who have been hit, as Madam Supervisor
Right.
pointed out. I don't want to be the one that has to come before the board and say, we've been hit, and, because it's not just files that they can get. They can lock up our directory controllers, and we can try to restore those till the cows come home, and it's going to fail miserably. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
And it's a large cost, too. So, so you think about the cost up front, but, with the small community, I think they had spent $150,000, and, and it happened quickly. And that was about 3 years ago, they said. And you don't tell who's who, but it's happening all around us. The attack. We got, 3 weeks ago, emails from, Livonia and 2 other communities, two ISDs, basically.
Yes.
They had gotten hacked, and it shot into our system. We were getting emails.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. That's all that we have today. Remember all our asking, and remember our request for authorization to engage a consultant for the work that we hope to do, and of course the firewall that is coming before you next week as well.
When are you planning on the consultant one? In January or?
In January, if we get the authorization, then we start in January. But again, remember, everything else is pretty much set, right? We have the committee that will work, the subject matter experts that will work with the consultant as well as the ITI department. We have the first draft of the RFP because we've basically covered the grounds on what we are asking. We're just ready. We're just ready to get going with this. Yeah. And again, to put it in context, the whole exercise of transitioning to a new ERP system for a township of our size is not something that will happen overnight. It's an exercise that will take at least 2 years plus. All right. So, and then it's going to be a gradual thing where we, let's say, for instance, we start with finance, or we start with, with treasurer's department, or we start with, MSD. Although MSD is making a case for them to be the first because they want to jump out from where they are. So it's going to take us some time to cover the grounds because it's that big. All right.
Okay, I just want to say this was a great presentation. Thank you very much. IT, you guys work so hard, so we all really appreciate all you do. And perfect presentation. I look forward to the other study sessions.
Thank you.
And if I could just make one last statement, I've been here forever and a day. I want to thank this board, all past boards. Steve, you've been on the board for a while. The board support has always been fantastic for IT, and I just want to say thank you very much. It makes our ability to provide the organization with what they need simpler. I know we have a lot of work to do, but I wanted to say thank you. I don't get an opportunity to speak to the board very often. But I just felt that, as I've been here for a while, I've had reasons to ponder. And it's like, I look back at my career, and it's like, I don't recall where a board has ever really shut down any of our requests. All have been supportive, and it's been appreciated. When Victor came, I think he was extremely surprised and appreciative of the fact that we have some of the technology that we do have. And without the board's historical support, we would not have that. So thank you.
Oh, great.
I find that you're not asking for luxury items. You only ask if we really need it, so I'm confident that you wouldn't try to put one by us, so.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for all your help. And I know, Joe, thanks for keeping us safe with all those hacks. And Devin for keeping the building department going. Victor for leading us with all of this. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, it
Thanks.
was very, very helpful to know what we have and, and I think there is a serious need for staffing too, right? When things become bigger and if you're getting in new systems.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So public comment, let's see, what's the next item? Anyone for public comment? If there's 4 people here, public comment, you can raise your hand. No public comment? All right, any board comments? Anything?
Just thank you. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll support.
Motion made by Treasurer Slavin, supported by Trustee Snyderman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved, board adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.